Hello, everyone, and welcome to Right Wing Rising. Please be sure to like this video down below before you are finished watching, and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So it's been about 2 weeks since I last made a video, and that was of course covering the fallout from the Trump versus Biden debate back on June 27th, and so much has happened since then, and that's a complete understatement. The entire state of the 2024 presidential race has been changed completely, especially in the roughly last 10 days. Trump got shot, Biden dropped out, Vance is the VP, and Harris is the new Dem nominee. Just like Kamala does, I spoke in rhyme there, but that's a good recap of the main four things that have happened in just under the last 2 weeks since I last made a video. I did a deep dive of the performance of Joe Biden and Donald Trump in the debate. Trump beat him so bad that he beat him right out of the race, as Joe Biden dropped out on Sunday in a very, very shocking move. I really started to believe that Biden would stay in the race as it got to be within a month from the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, happening in Chicago in mid to late August. I really thought he would stay in the race and be the nominee against all odds after much pressure from many people in his own party. Many leaders of the Democratic Party were calling for him to step aside over health concerns that were broadcasted nationally in the debate against Trump. And he had come out and been defiant in speeches, in different statements that he and his campaign made, that he would stay in the race, that he was not going anywhere. Biden went so far as to say that it would take God coming down and telling him to drop out of the race for him to do so. Since I do not think that's what happened, obviously, I think he either finally caved to pressure, saw the poll numbers, acknowledged that he did not have a shot to beat Trump, and either did not want to lose to him, or again, finally caved into the pressure and stepped aside. But there's also a possibility that did Joe Biden himself actually remove himself from the race? The whole thing was very, very odd. It was out of nowhere, again, on a Sunday afternoon. He gave no speech. It wasn't like he went on national TV, addressed the nation, said, I'm dropping out, and I endorse Kamala Harris. No, he just sent it out over Twitter in a statement that had no presidential seal on it, and his signature looked very different than normal. It had an underline under his signature, which, as far as I'm aware, has never been synonymous with his signature. So that was very, very strange. And it just reeked of coordination. How quickly the Democratic Party solidified behind Kamala Harris after weeks of inner turmoil over who would be the nominee. And within really hours and within a day or two, we saw Harris basically lock up the nomination and get enough of Biden's delegates, which is a lot, to switch to her, pledge support for her, which would give her enough delegates and votes at the convention to make her the nominee, which she will not officially become until the convention, but she is now the presumptive nominee. So it all just seems very odd, a little bit eyebrow-raising, given the circumstances of his withdrawal from the race and how fast Kamala Harris moved into the spotlight. And we also did not hear from Joe Biden for 2 to 3 days after he dropped out. So it's very strange that he said a medical emergency, in addition to God coming down and telling him to drop out of the race, would be the only thing that would make him suspend his campaign and not run for a second term. And then all of a sudden, the day of, or I think the day after, one of the two, very quickly after he said that, boom, he came down with COVID mysteriously, was not seen or heard from, and then magically, when he's in quarantine, he suddenly decides to drop out and releases a statement, quote unquote, saying that he was going to be doing that. And this all stemmed from his debate performance. We knew, as conservatives, and anyone that watched a Joe Biden speech or listened to him talk, we all knew that Joe Biden was mentally declining, and he was not up to the task of being president anymore, and really hadn't been since he took office in 2021. But the media covered it up, the establishment covered it up, told us all that we were crazy, we were imagining it, we were conspiracy theorists. But once it got broadcast for 90 minutes on national TV, on CNN of all places, they couldn't cover it up anymore, and all of a sudden had to throw him under the bus. But perhaps that was the plan all along, because Biden did want debates earlier, which for his campaign's perspective, he was doing so bad in the polls Perhaps having a debate, having a good performance, having it early would help give him some momentum back and perhaps give him a boost in the polls, like I mentioned in my last video. But perhaps it was also the Democrats trying to expose him early on. And I'm not really sure how much it matters who is the nominee for the Democrats, because let's face it, the Democratic Party is a machine. They are great at turning out voters. They like to play dirty. They will do anything and everything they can to make sure that they win the election, no matter if it was Dementia Joe as the nominee or Cackling Kamala as the nominee, as it is now. There is a large chunk of the Democrat Party, the voter base that is, that will turn out to vote blue no matter who. And that's just the way it is, unfortunately. As crazy as it seems, since the Democrats tend to run really, really awful and far-left candidates these days, but it doesn't matter. Their voters will get out and vote for them. And because Donald Trump is way too mean and polarizing, and obviously racist and the second coming of Hitler, so they can never consider voting for him, even though his policies made this country thrive under his tenure as president, and are really just common sense policies. They're not even that far right. Yes, he has some conservative policies, which is great. That's why conservatives support him. I myself support him. But a lot of his policies, when it comes to the economy, foreign policy, immigration, they're just common sense. And if most people focus on his policies instead of his personality or how his personality is perceived by the media and spun and lied about by the media, then perhaps they actually would consider voting for him. But many average Democrat voters just have Trump derangement syndrome. They hate the man with a passion, and they will vote for any Democrat that is put up. And we saw the result of 9 years of demonizing Donald Trump play out on July 13th when Donald Trump got shot at his rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. The bullet was inches away from being fatal, penetrating and grazing his right ear, which was only the outcome because he miraculously turned his head to look at a chart he was explaining to the crowd at the right moment as the bullet was fired at him. And things could have gone very, very differently. It was still a disastrous day, a very sad day for America. Not only was it the first attempt against a sitting or former president since the 1980s when Ronald Reagan got shot, and a heinous show of political violence, no matter who you support, but also tragic because an attendee of the rally sitting behind Trump got shot and killed at the rally, protecting his family. So we pray for that man's soul and also for his family during this unimaginably difficult time. 2 other people were seriously injured. They both recovered, thankfully. And there could have been more injured, I'm sure there were, but those were the 2 that were reported on initially as being in critical condition. So it was just a big mess and a sad day for America. And it sent off a political shockwave across this country, with a lot of people coming out and sympathizing with Trump and supporting him, even people that might not normally support him or back him. And that was a very positive thing to see. And Trump came out with a message of unity. He didn't come out with a message of division and trying to unite the country behind him after this terrible event. It definitely helped Trump's image, especially from the photos that came from the shooting of him with his fist in the air, blood on his face, pumping up the crowd, telling them fight, 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 and telling them that he was okay as he got escorted off the stage by the Secret Service. But this was a scary moment. Not only did I think that he got killed when I first saw the video, as I saw him drop down after grabbing his ear, which was him dropping smartly to avoid any more shots that were coming his way, probably also out of pain, but initial reaction, it seemed like he got shot and dropped immediately. It seemed like he had been killed or seriously wounded, but thankfully that's not the case. But still, people were wounded, a person was killed, it was a tragic day. And still some Democrats were coming out and saying that this was staged by the Trump campaign, which is completely ridiculous. Someone literally died, and you think that they staged that? Absolutely sickening. And also just the fact of the probability of that being staged successfully. The whole thing would have pivoted on Trump pivoting at the right time. And do you know how hard that would be to do with a bullet? It would not be hard. It would be impossible to plan that to go off the way that it did. Because it was not planned. It was a tragedy. That's what it was. So it's really sad the Democrats are saying that. And many voters are thinking that Trump staged this somehow to make his popularity go up, which is completely ridiculous and also funny because they call conservatives the conspiracy theorists. But yet they're out there floating a theory such as that. And there are many questions, believe me, to come from this day. Why did the Secret Service, who were made aware by rallygoers of the shooter's presence on that roof minutes and almost an hour in some cases before the actual shooting happened, they still let Trump go out on the stage even knowing that the shooter was there? Why was the roof not covered? To make sure that no shooter was on the roof? We also find out that the Biden administration blocked more security from being given to Trump for this rally, which is very suspicious. It was claimed that this was due to Jill Biden, the First Lady, being in the area that the rally was being conducted and being held, so that more Secret Service had to be pulled over away from Trump and to her detail. But that still seems like a poor excuse. So a lot of mistakes by the Secret Service that need to be answered and that people need to be held accountable for. After attending hearings at Congress about this mishap, the Secret Service director did resign, and that's good. And there's also even further allegations that allege and point to suspicious things going on behind the scenes and leading up to the shooting of Trump at that rally. The building that the shooter was on was bought by a corporation whose founder is part of the Brookings Institute, who has been a key player this election cycle in the lawfare movement to prevent Donald Trump from appearing on the ballot that we saw happen earlier this year. Combined with the fact that a few months before this assassination attempt occurred, back in April, I believe it was, House Democrats put forth a bill to remove the Secret Service protection from Donald Trump. All of these things are very fishy and coincidental at best, and the media and Democrats are partly responsible for this event because they have been demonizing Donald Trump as the second coming of Hitler for 9 years now. He's a fascist who will destroy this country. He's authoritarian. Even though all he did while being president was make America stronger, make the economy thrive, and help us have a more secure border and better foreign relations with other countries and be stronger against our enemies abroad. He is a nationalist who tried to advance populist policies when in power to make the country better for working, everyday Americans. Hardly the actions of a dictator. But since the media and Democrats have been slandering him for all this time, it's honestly surprising it took this long for a serious attempt on his life. And they have to bear the brunt of the responsibility for that. Slandering someone and making up constantly false stories and hoaxes about them is not good. And there also is a responsibility of one's actions that someone must take when exercising free speech, especially someone with the wide-reaching platforms that elected officials and members of the media have. They have to be responsible with the words and statements that they're putting out there. Just like with any freedom that we hold in this country, they should not be infringed, but the people exercising those freedoms should also do so responsibly. This shooting also took place 2 days before the RNC, 2 days before Donald Trump announced J.D. Vance as his running mate in the 2024 election. And he is a wonderful pick. He has a great life story. He grew up in Middle America, coming from Middletown, Ohio. He came out of a family that struggled with poverty and addiction and worked his way into Yale Law School and into the military, having a successful career, a very smart and articulate guy who has worked for everything that he has. He had a great acceptance speech at the RNC, and he's already doing rallies for Donald Trump. On Monday alone, he did 2, one in Ohio, and later in the day, he flew to Virginia and had another rally there. And he had crowd sizes you would expect only Trump to get, which is very impressive. So he's going to be a good campaign surrogate for Trump, and the two of them will be able to barnstorm the swing states effectively, since they both are effective communicators in their own unique way. Trump being more of a comedian and showman and being more expressive going off script. And J.D. Vance has some of these moments and some of these characteristics in his own way, but he comes off as a very, very polished speaker, and you can easily see that he's very intelligent and knows what he's talking about. And that's definitely a good person to have on your side, communicating your message to voters. And he's also very conservative. He's not a placating pick by Trump to make the establishment happy. He picked someone with the upside of being able to resonate with the voters that Trump needs to win over to win the election. Someone that has a great story, someone that's very, very smart, but someone that's very conservative. On some issues, he's further right than Trump is. It's good to have someone like that to whisper in Trump's ear and make sure he's making a good decision, not whispering in his ear in a bad way to push him more to the center or to the left on certain issues. So that will be great, just having Vance in a glorified advisor role and being able to shadow Trump for the 4 years if they win. And then he would be a good successor for Trump, in my opinion, in 2028 because he's great on the issues. He aligns with Trump voters on pretty much all the issues and has a really good outlook on immigration, foreign policy, education, and a whole host of other issues. He really has the policies and the worldview of someone that you would be comfortable being the successor to Trump as the leader of the America First movement. And I had expressed concerns about Vance being the running mate of Trump when I made a video about 2 weeks ago previewing who Trump might pick to be his VP, for the fact that I thought it might be doubling down too much on Trump in the way of policy or just perceived persona, especially by the media, and more of the center-right Republican voter base might be a little bit less okay with Vance, maybe preferring someone like Rubio or Youngkin, or even Ben Carson, all people I saw as viable options for Trump that would make decent VPs. But Vance definitely topped my list as the person I would want to be the potential successor to Trump, more so, definitely, than any of those other people. And Vance has had a much more positive response among the voter base and even donors and people in the political world than I would have expected. Heck, even Elon Musk, who, by the way, came out and endorsed Donald Trump after the assassination attempt and is going to donate to his campaign in some way, which remains unknown at the current time, he also came out and endorsed J.D. Vance. Elon Musk has definitely shifted to the right, but he's still not a hardcore conservative. The fact that he thinks J.D. Vance is a solid VP pick says that most Republican voters are definitely going to be on board with him as the running mate for Trump, and that's a very, very good thing to unite the Republican Party behind this awesome ticket that we have of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. And Vance is also very young. He's only 39 years old, half the age of Donald Trump. So it adds some important youth to the ticket. And the Republican National Convention, where Vance was announced as the pick of Trump, was just great overall this time. It was very unifying for the Republican Party. It brought everyone out in support of Donald Trump. Even Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley made great speeches and made the case for voting for Trump. There was great messaging being put out there to articulate the Republican Party's platform and to contrast it with the Democratic Party policies and the record of the current Biden-Harris administration. So they made a good case to voters of why they should elect Donald Trump once again and elect Republicans all across the country. Overall, the Republican Party priorities and platform that they put out was really good and really solid. I was perhaps not too happy about how they moderated a little bit on social conservative issues, such as abortion and on the LGBTQ movement. While I do understand that they're trying to take away things that Democrats can grasp at straws and attack them on, since there's not much the Democrats have to run on this time, so they're trying to remove anything the Democrats can run on, especially since there's not a lot that can be done on those issues by and large at the national level. So I understand all of that, but you want to make sure that those are still issues that Republican elected officials around the country are still going to take a good stance on. But beside that, it was a great convention. They had the families of the soldiers that were killed in Afghanistan due to the disastrous withdrawal under Biden in 2021. They had them speak at the convention. They had the students from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, who defended the American flag against Palestine protesters to speak at the convention. The man who was killed at the Trump rally was a firefighter, and his uniform was displayed behind Trump during his acceptance speech. There was just very positive messaging, very unifying messaging going on, and highlighting the failures of the Democrats and the current administration and how the Republicans would contrast with them and do a better job governing. And that's very important. And Trump's acceptance speech, while a little bit long, which isn't really a bad thing because Biden could never do that, so it contrasts with Biden and shows that Trump has a lot of energy and they really can't use the old card against him because I'm sure they will try to now that Biden's out of the race. Oh, now look, Trump's the old one. They're already trying to do it. It's insane. But he has a lot of energy. His speech was very, very good. He highlighted his record as president and what he would do in his second term, how he would fix the current issues facing the country. He also talked about the assassination attempt from his perspective. He even got a little bit emotional, which is not like Trump. It was a very good conference, and it highlighted how the establishment is losing influence in the Republican Party. There's a new wave of conservatives and conservatism coming in, and that's a very, very good thing to make sure that the party is pushed in the direction of the policies that Trump is pushing, not what the Mitch McConnells of the world want to have us supporting and voting for. And that is a very positive thing overall. It also came out during the RNC that all of the cases against Trump have fallen apart. The January 6th case got dismissed, got wiped out by the Supreme Court immunity ruling. The Jack Smith case against Trump with the classified documents got thrown out by the judge there. And the case in Georgia that was being brought against him on RICO charges for his conduct following the 2020 election by the prosecutor Fani Willis in Georgia has been indefinitely suspended since all of these scandals that have come out about her during the course of the trial earlier this year brought the case to a halt, meaning that it had to be decided if Fani Willis could be removed from this case, or should be, which paused the trial, pushed it into the future at an undetermined time, and this determination about her being either removed from the case or left on it will not be taking place until the end of the year, after the election. So Trump will not be stuck in court at any point, and that's a very positive thing for him and his campaign moving forward. And then Kamala Harris becoming the presumptive nominee is now the latest development shaking this election cycle in the past 10 or so days. A lot of conservatives are worried about Kamala Harris, and I completely understand that. There's a lot we do not know right now. This is a completely unprecedented election. The nominee of the party dropping out a month before the convention, and only about 3 to 4 months before the election itself. But we have to realize that there's a lot to attack Kamala Harris on. She's just as unpopular and as unfavorable in the polling as Joe Biden is. And that's with her being the VP, not being out there in the media and talked about as much in the public eye as Joe Biden is as the president. She's unpopular in the Rust Belt. She doesn't have any appeal there to the average working class American, especially being from California. Middle America hates California and the West Coast by and large as a general rule. She's pretty off-putting when you listen to her in her mannerisms and her cringy laugh, and she laughs at everything, no matter what the topic. It's really kind of weird. And she's just not very smart. She doesn't put very smart sentences together or say anything of substance. And in that regard, she's not that much different from Joe Biden. She's even further to the left than Joe Biden. She's terrible on illegal immigration. She wanted ICE abolished, in her own words. She says that illegal immigrants should not be prosecuted as criminals. She wants healthcare and Medicare provided to illegal immigrants. She provided bail to a lot of the Black Lives Matter rioters in 2020. She is extremely pro-abortion. She helped cover up Planned Parenthood when there was a scandal uncovering some of the more unseemly things that was going on in those centers. She wants gun control and all guns to be confiscated across this country. And she's horrible on energy. She supports the Green New Deal. She wants to ban fracking, ban offshore drilling. She would be a disaster as the president in so many different ways, both on actual policies governing this country, but also by pushing policies that would spit in the face of conservative Christian voters in this country. And her energy policies really will be a liability, mark my words, in states like Pennsylvania that she needs to win. I'm not sure many blue-collar workers in those industries are going to run out to support her. And she also could not escape the record of the Biden administration. She has always backed Biden's every move. She has covered up about Biden's health. No matter what the media will try and cover up, she was placed in charge of the border by Biden himself. And we all know how that's been turning out. So Trump will have just as easy of a time attacking Kamala over the border as he did with Biden. And she can't run from that because she bears a brunt of the responsibility on that front. And the Democrats' arguments about Trump being a threat to democracy go out the window and can be easily counterattacked with Harris as the nominee. Not a single Democrat voter cast a ballot for Harris in the primary. 14 million Democrat voters voted for Biden this year to be the nominee, only for him to drop out after that process ended, and now Harris gets coronated as the nominee by those delegates and the party establishment without the say-so from a single voter, and I don't know anything less American, less democratic than that. And her being at the top of the ticket gives Democrats down ballot a lot of headaches, because being affiliated with her statements and her record is not going to be popular and not help them moderate their image to the average voter. Trump and the Republican Party are still in a good spot. Despite Biden dropping out, which sure, you would have rather had Biden run because he was an easy target with a lot of flaws to pick apart and always embarrassed himself whenever he went on in front of a camera. A lot of young voters hated him over his handling of the Israel-Hamas crisis. So there was a lot of good things for Republicans running against Biden, but there's arguably even more against Kamala. And Republicans just have to message that right, expose her for who she is to voters who might not know much about her over the coming months ahead of Election Day. Trump still leads by and large in the polls, and even slim leads for him in the polls is actually a good thing, because it means that he wins the Electoral College if he's even winning or slightly losing the national popular vote. So he's still in a good spot. Republicans are still in a good spot. We just need Republican voters to get out and vote, and we will overcome everything the Democrat Party is trying to throw at Trump and our party. From pulling a bait and switch, going from Biden to Harris, from Trump being almost assassinated, because no matter what, Harris is still attached to the Biden-Harris administration, which is super unpopular, has done great damage to this country, and has pushed a lot of policies, pretty much all of their policies, that are unpopular with the majority of Americans. That needs to be stressed, and if we stay on message, and Trump and Vance and all other Republicans articulate their vision for the country and Republican priorities and policies, and contrast them with the horrible, far-left, very, very liberal record and policies of Kamala Harris and the current administration that she has a large part in, we will win in November, and we will take this country back by sweeping many Democrats out of office all across the country this November.